Everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and it's custom card review number 4 time. I've been taking a look at all of your Twitter submissions over at twitter.com/ZeddyHS with the hashtag ZeddyCustom. So if you want to submit cards for me to review, send them on over there. Hopefully I can get to it. Again, I can't cover them all. I've been trying my best. You guys keep sending so many to me. I got a big backlog, but yeah, I'll cover quite a few over on this video. So hopefully if you sent one, it'll be in this one or a future video. Yeah, we're going to take a look at your guys' custom cards. Again, we've been rating it on 2 different levels. We have it on like design/flavor. Basically, do I think the card is like well designed, interesting? Is it flavorful to the Hearthstone world? All that kind of stuff. Does it make sense in the class, for example? And then on balance, is it too overpowered, underpowered? And then I'll kind of comment on what I would do to either maybe bump it up in power or bump it down. And it's all based on a 5-star scale, with like 5-star being the top, 1-star being the worst. So let's take a look at some of your guys' user-submitted cards. So first we have a submission from Adam Taylor. This is a neutral epic card called Jealous Blacksmith. It's a 3-mana 2/2, so not the greatest of stats. Battle cry, look at your current weapon, Death Rattle, equip a new copy of it. So this is a really interesting card in that it will actually visually look at your weapon, and my assumption is if it's a weapon that's been upgraded or it has enhancements, that Jealous Blacksmith will read it, and when you get it back, it's not like, you know, re-equip a destroyed weapon or something, it comes back at its base. That it would come back with its, but like, you know, scaled, buffed enchantment. So I think that's really unique. We haven't seen that really before. And I mean, the guy is pretty flavorful, I think. Jealous Blacksmith, the name works pretty well. He's looking at that weapon, he wants it for himself, and well, eventually he'll get it. So I think the card's really interesting. I like that, you know, it's not a 3-mana 3/4. That's I mean, you might not get hired by Blizzard making this not a 3-mana 3/4, but yeah, it's you know, understated, but the effect can be really powerful. Like, just imagine like a Kingsbane rogue deck where you can, you know, it's another way of getting your Kingsbane back, or just the silliness you can do. Bomb Warrior would definitely love this. You upgrade like the bomb weapon and you make it like, you know, a 5/4 or something, and then you play this, and then once it breaks you get a 5/4. It's pretty ridiculous. There's a lot of implications for it. From a design and flavor perspective, I think it's pretty sweet. I'll give it a 4 in that regard. From a balance point of view, I think it's pretty busted. I think looking at your current weapon and copying it when you have cards like Wrench Caliber in the game, Warrior would just be able to abuse this really, really devastatingly well, as well as with like a Rogue with like the self-sharpening sword and stuff like that. It is a bit slow though, you know, 3 mana, do nothing, and if it gets transformed or silenced anyway, it's pretty devastating. But yeah, so there are downsides to it, but I feel like the upside is just pretty insane. I don't know if I'd make it, I think I'd make it maybe 4 mana, something like that, but it just feels like it might be a little too strong. But again, it's slow, it can get screwed over by transform effects, so I'll give it a 3 in the balance regard. It's probably not too overpowered, but maybe it is. There's a little bit of scariness to it, but it's a really cool card. Next, we have an addition to the Rager family. This was submitted by BasicallyADiety. It's a 3-mana 5/1 neutral mech called Foe Rager. Battlecry, if a mech died this turn, add 3 spare parts to your hand. If you're not aware of what spare parts are, they're from the GVG set, and this is even indicated as a GVG card, so fitting with that theme. And you can get stuff like +1 attack, like +1 health. You can give your minion stealth, taunt. You can rewind, bring it back to your hand. So, you know, the spare parts were never that amazing. Typically, any card that ran it didn't really see much play, unless it was like Clockwork Gnome, saw a little bit, Mechanical Yeti, but yeah, spare parts, it's like, the effect you get is basically not worth a mana. So you didn't see a ton of play, but yeah, you get a pretty garbage Foe Rager, and, you know, you have to have a friendly mech die this turn, but it doesn't have to be on the board, right? Like, you could trade a bunch off and then play Foe Rager and get it, but I think flavor design-wise, in terms of it being part of the Rager family, is great, because this card is terrible. Like, you're never going to play this. It's pretty awful, but you get some spare parts, which is cool, and all that. It feels mech, it feels Rager. I'm going to give it a 5. It's really bad, and it's another Rager, you know? And from the balance perspective, it is pretty rough. Like, it's still a 3-mana 5/1 that dies to everything. Spare parts are not exactly that great. You do get 3 of them for 3 mana, so it's okay, but then you have to play them. That's not great unless you're playing Apprentice, and then you're playing an Apprentice spare part deck. I don't know, maybe play this in like some janky quest mage, but yeah, I'll give it a 2 on the balance perspective just because it's so bad, it's so underpowered. But it's a rager, so it probably should be like that. And there's meme potential with it, right? Like you can do all sorts of dumb stuff with the spare parts. So yeah, I'll give it a 2 on the balance part, but only because it's underpowered. I think the card's cool. I could realistically see this be a rager. Why not? It's absolutely terrible, and as a result, good job on the card. I like it. Next, we're going to take a look at a 2-mana. I believe this is a Warlock spell, because it's called a Deal with the Warlock. The color on the border is not exactly clear, but I'm going to assume it's a Warlock spell. It's not really neutral spells. And this is from Bola, and yeah, it's a 2-mana spell called Deal with the Warlock, and it's an epic, and it gives a card to your opponent. On his next turn, he chooses a more expensive one to give to you. It costs 4 or less, so this is a really weird, wacky, interesting card, to say the least. So I guess the idea is you're going to force your opponent to hand over a card that's of value. You get to mana cheat it, and he gets to pick it. And the idea is that you give him a useless card, and he has to give up one, and if it costs, you know, if it's more expensive than the card you gave him, it's going to cost 4 less. So there's quite a few issues I have with this card. So the first is, like, if he has no cards in hand, for instance, right, you give him the card, and it has to be more expensive than the one you gave to him, does that mean he doesn't have to give you a card at all? Like, what if he top decks a card that's more expensive? Also, if he has no cards that are more expensive, I guess you just gave him a card. So that would feel really bad. I think it's an interesting design in terms of, like, you know, you're sacrificing a card and trying to screw with your opponent and get a mana cheat out of them and force them to lose a card that they probably wanted to play and all that. But it's in terms of, like, the mechanically wise, like, how it would work. Warlock, I guess self-sacrificing, effectively, like, discarding a card to gain some bonus. It's kind of in that regard. It fits a little bit in with Warlock that way. So, flavor, design, I'll give it a 3. It's rather clunky. From the balance perspective, I gotta give it a 1. Like, this card just, it's really, really bad in that, like, it's unplayable in, like, almost every matchup. Like, any aggressive matchup, this card's bad. Even against, like, the slower decks, right? Like, you give them, say you give them, like, a 5-mana card. They'll give you an AoE, maybe, that you don't care. Like, they're never going to give you a win condition, right? Unless they're hand-struck. But, again, if you're playing a greedy deck, you're going to have more of the expensive cards. So, I just don't see this card being particularly playable. But I think it's a fun, interesting design. But, yeah, I got to give it a 1 on the balance. This card is completely unplayable outside of, like, the memeiest of greed options. Next, we have a neutral epic called Time Walker. This is submitted by Chronos. It's a 5-mana 5/5, so not the best of stats. It's whatever. And at the start of the game, you banish this card from your deck in 5 turns, shuffle it back in. So this card, this Time Walker, I like, first off, the name's perfect because he goes back in time or ahead of time. He disappears from the game, and then he comes back 5 turns later. He's walking through time, and then he stumbles back into the game. I think that's really interesting, really cool. And, yeah, from a flavor perspective, that's pretty sick. From a design perspective, it's really unique card. So you might be thinking, why in the hell would you ever want to do this? What does this accomplish? What it accomplishes is it thins your deck. You will start the game, if you run 2 of these, you'll have a 28-card deck because he's gone from your deck, right? Or a 29-card deck if you run 1, which makes your early game more consistent to draw what you want. Like, you're going to mulligan more consistently, you're going to draw better stuff consistently early, but then you draw it, and then he's in your deck, and then you can draw 5 and a 5/5, and that feels pretty bad. So from a design flavor perspective, I think it's really interesting, really cool. I like the way it, like, can, like, yeah, we haven't really seen a deck thinning thing like this outside of, like, Patches the Pirate, really. And this is a little more subtle and a little less broken. So I'm going to give it a 5 on the design flavor. I think it's really interesting, really cool. The name fits. Everything about it just fits really well. From a balance perspective, I don't know how much you benefit from thinning your deck to 28 cards and then having to top deck a 5-mana 5/5. Like, that's really bad. Like, a 5-mana 5/5 is really hard to play. It does nothing when you play it. It does nothing ever. And I don't know. I don't know if that's really worth it. Like, it's hard to say. But I don't know how you'd make this balanced in any other regard. I think you could at least give it the Prince Malchezaar treatment and just make it a 5-mana 5/6. Like, if you want to make this playable in any way, like, I think you could make it a 5-mana 5/6. And even that, it's still pretty bad. But balance, it just feels too balanced. I don't know. It's like in that middle of the road. Like, it's just not strong enough to see play for the most part. Unless that thinning part is just really good. I don't know. It's tough to say. I'll go in the middle of the road. I'll give it a 3 out of 5 on the balance scale. I just don't think the effect's strong enough. But, I mean, it's hard to say without actually trying it out. But yeah, really cool card. Really well designed. I love the design and flavor of it. Next, we have Sealess Dark Moon. This is submitted by Dakriulosti. We just had Sealess enter to the game. He submitted this card before that happened. And this is a different take on it. We have a 4-mana 4/5 neutral legendary. So hey, he's a neutral legendary as well in our expansion. In Battlecry, swap a random card in your hand with one from your opponent's deck. So hey, it's also similar in terms of at least rotating cards around in a way, right? To what we saw released yesterday, the other day. And this card's really interesting. It's premium statted, all that stuff, but it seems to be that Sealess is this, like, kind of mischief maker carnival dude. I'm not good on WoW lore, so I don't go on the whole lore side of things when I do my custom reviews, but from what I could tell with Sealess from the legendary introduced in the game, he definitely fits the flavor and the theme of Sealess, and I love the art that you have here for him, and I think the effect and all that stuff is really top-notch. I'll give it a 5 on design and flavor, because honestly, the card itself, like swapping a random card in your hand with one from your opponent's deck, can be just really, really stupid and interesting. I don't think, like, you know, it kind of reminds... It's kind of more of like a troll meme card, but, I mean, the game needs a bit more of that, and you never know. Maybe you're playing this against, like, you're playing Wild against, like, Reno Priest, and you have a decent chance of just yoinking their, like, Raza or Anduin. You can steal a combo piece because you swap, right? And you probably don't care about what card you're giving them, so this would be a really good, like, mill troll card, and I think that's really sweet. So yeah, I'll give it a 5 again on the design and flavor. In terms of balance, I don't think this is egregiously overpowered. I think it's really unfun for your opponent. It's fun for you to swap a random card and maybe screw your opponent, but I think it's one of these cards that Blizzard probably wouldn't go down that road, because, like, literally stealing a card from your opponent's deck, we've only seen that once, really, with, like, Death Grip, and they made that, like, a really unlikely option off, like, the Death Knight cards you could get off, like, Arthas or the Lich King. But in terms of balance, like, I don't think this would be, like, a super meta-defining card, but you might just throw it in. It's a Yeti that could possibly disrupt your opponent. It basically would be, like, our combo deck's really meta, and then you might want to consider running Silas Dark Moon. And for that reason, I'll give it a 4 on the balance part. Like, it's not particularly overpowered. It's not particularly underpowered. It definitely has its place. I just don't know if it's a card that would be implemented in the game, because, again, it could be relatively unfun, but really interesting and cool card. Next, we have Jin the Virtuoso. This is submitted by Darnoc. It's a neutral legendary. 7-mana 4/4, Battlecry. Deal 4 damage to an enemy minion. Overkill, deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion. So you get to pick what to hit, and if you overkill it, it'll hit another random enemy minion, and if that overkills, it'll keep chaining, and you'll, like, just destroy the board. So it is apparently a League of Legends hero who's, like, very much a shooter, mass murderer, psychopath type of character. You know, just goes on the spree, and I mean, this makes sense. It fits that flavor of the card. In terms of, like, that hero, sorry. In terms of design, though, I probably wouldn't make this neutral. This seems way, way too strong to be neutral, and, like, this feels like more of a definition, like a defining characteristic of, like, a shooting type character that, like, kills, and I feel like Rexar might be a better fit, or Demon Hunter maybe, just something more on the aggressive line, something more, you know, like, especially like Hunter, they have their bows and all of that, so maybe it'd be more suited to a specific class. So in terms of design flavor, I'll give it a 3 in that regard. In balance, again, as a neutral legendary, it feels just much too powerful, like, giving this would be an insane neutral AoE effectively, because 4 damage, you know, against most stuff, you're going to overkill a lot of things, and you could do a lot of work with it. So I feel like it's probably a little too overpowered. And, like, we have cards like Lurker below. Although that's a class card and it deals only 3, you're paying 1 more mana to deal 4 and potentially just wipe the board. So I probably notch it up to 8 mana, or, like, the damage to only 3 to make it a bit more balanced. But yeah, it's a little too overpowered, a little too strong. So I'll give it a 2 on the balance regard, but it's a cool card, and it definitely fits that theme of going on that shooting spree. Next, we have a dual class card for Warrior and Paladin, submitted by Desantisd. It's a 3-mana 3/3, Overworked Forged Tinker, Battlecry. Discover a weapon from this card's other class. Now, this is something we haven't really seen yet. So this is a dual class card that for each class will act differently. And what you do is, well, if you're playing it in Warrior, you discover a weapon from Paladin, or if you're playing as a Paladin, you'll discover a card from Warrior. And this has some interesting implications, like there's not that many weapons in each class, right? Especially in Standard. So you're playing Paladin, you might be able to find Bulwark of Azzinoth pretty easily, and that could be really good depending on your deck. Or you're playing, you know, Warrior, and you can steal True Silver, I guess. Or if you're playing Wild, you can get like the legendary weapon that like hand buffs. So there's a lot of interesting implications, and I guess if you would get this randomly from like say a mage got this somehow, or another class got this somehow, I assume they would just discover from either of the classes. It would just basically be a group pool. But anyways, design flavor, I think it's really cool. Overworked Forge Tinker, he's being overworked, he can't even handle it, and he's got to work for both classes. You know what, I'm gonna get one out. He's stressed out. I can see it. I'll give it a 4 on the design flavor. I think it's a really interesting design card, especially just the way that the different class thing works. And from a balance perspective, I mean, I don't particularly think this card's overpowered at all. If anything, it's not that phenomenal, because typically any like card that's discovered a weapon just really hasn't seen that much play, because it's an expensive investment to discover weapon, because you still have to spend the mana on equipping it, and all you're getting in its place is a 3-mana 3/3. So you'd really have to make the synergies worth it, and I don't really know with the weapons in Paladin and Warrior what they could really do to like cross and utilize it. I think Warrior would probably have the better chance of making it work. Like, there's a really good Paladin weapon, and you have the upgrade card, right? You have upgrade and cutting class. You have a lot more weapon synergies you could make it work. But yeah, overall, I'll give it a 4 on the balance perspective. I think it might be a little bit underpowered, but overall, it's a perfectly reasonable card. Next card we'll take a look at is a Demon Hunter card. It is a demon. It's a 3-mana 3/3. This is submitted by Jarman, and it's called Adaptable Archfiend Battlecry. If played from the left of your hand, gain +2 attack and rush. If played from the right, gain +2 health and taunt. So this is utilizing Outcast in a whole different way. It's technically not even an Outcast card, but it benefits from Outcast mechanics. So like if it's on the very left side of your hand, it's immediately a 5/3 with rush. Play from the right, it's immediately a 3/5 with taunt. So it's like Sedjin for 3. If you don't, though, it's just a 3/3. And that feels pretty bad, but it's a demon, so you have like some synergies even with like philosophy in Demon Hunter, so you can get like multiple copies of it, which will put them to your right, or the copy to your right, so you could immediately play it there and potentially buffed if you have like philosophy on the left. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on with this card, because it's so much about manipulating your hand, and I feel like Outcast hasn't really utilize that well enough. It has to an extent. It's one of my favorite parts about playing Demon Hunter is setting up your Outcast stuff, and this is doing it in a whole different way. And getting this as like a top deck would be pretty good. Playing Ascension for 3 is flexible. It's just really interesting. And from a design flavor perspective in Demon Hunter, it's a demon, it's adaptable. I can see all this stuff really being pulled off. It makes sense to me, but it feels like there's too much text that Blizzard wouldn't really get around. Like, there's too much to it that it's like, if play from the right, play from the left. Don't know if they go that route, but it's cool. I like it. I'll give it a 4 on that perspective. From a balance side, I don't feel it's overpowered at all, and I don't feel it's underpowered at all. I feel like it really needs to come down on like turns 3 and 4 to be really good, and to set up Outcast on turns 3 or 4, especially on the right side, is basically impossible. Like, it's a card you're going to keep in your mulligan on your left. Other than that, it's, unless you top deck it exactly on 3, it's not going to work out that great. Like, I actually don't think it would be consistent enough to see reliable play. But I don't know how you really get around that, because this is the way the card's designed. And I mean, the fact that the left side gives it rush is a little bit better than the left side giving it taunt. And the reason I say that is because top decking a taunt can be pretty useful. Seen with like the Outcast, like the one that gives you like the immune that has rush, it just isn't as impactful to just draw it and play. But setting up your rush, your 5/3, 3-mana 5/3 rush in a specific turn can be really impactful to get that removal option in. So I'll give it a 3 on the balance. I just feel it's too underpowered. I just feel like it wouldn't see play. It wouldn't be reliable enough, but I'm not sure how you get around that other than making it cheaper or something. Like, again, yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but really cool card, and definitely fits the Demon Hunter theme. The last card we're going to take a look at today is Drenari Crystal Shaper. It's a 3-mana 3/3 neutral epic, battle cry. You add a perfect crystal to your hand. Its cost is equal to your unused mana crystals, but you need at least one. And you can see the art here. That's the perfect crystal. Deal damage to a minion equal to the cost of this card plus 2. So he's making it so that it has to cost 1. You can't get 0 mana, deal 2 damage. But so basically, you will spend all of your mana and you'll get plus 2 attack on it. So you cap out, I guess, at 10 mana, you could deal 12 damage to a minion. So this is like really flexible removal, right? You play this on 4 and you have a 3 mana 3/3 that gives you like a 1 mana spellstone that deals 3 or whatever. That's pretty good. It's like Holy Smite. It scales well, it's flexible. It's pretty interesting. In terms of like the flavor of the card, I mean, he's Draenei, he's a crystal shaper, and he gets it absolutely perfect. He's got you that perfect crystal that you can weave in perfectly every single turn, and I think it makes sense to me. I'll give it a 4 out of 5 on the design flavor. It feels pretty good to me. And then in terms of balance, the crystals are pretty insane. They're pretty insane. The 3 mana 3/3 body's fine. Crystal itself is just, it's kind of insane. It's so flexible. Like, you can just spend your mana and then weave it in, and, you know, you're minimum getting like 3 damage, 4 damage, 5 damage as you go up, right? That's really very powerful. I probably would scale it down to the damage to be at least plus 1, because right away you're starting off with a better, like, basically Holy Smite, which is like the best early cheap removal in the game right now in standard. 1 mana, deal 3. I'd probably notch it down to 1, because then you still have the flexibility, right? Like, if it's 3 mana, you're still dealing 4. It's Shadow Bolt. That's pretty good. And I just feel like at plus 2, it's just way too good, especially for a neutral option that, I mean, it could be an auto include in a lot of decks. So in terms of balance, I'll give it a 2. I would just, yeah, make that damage scale a little bit higher. But I like the card. I like the flexibility option with it. And hell, you got synergies with like Bran and stuff in WoW. Getting multiple perfect crystals could be pretty sweet. So that's this week's custom card review. And again, if I didn't get to your cards, I apologize. There's just so many to go over. There are so many more to go through. We got at least a couple more weeks alone worth of videos. But again, if you want to submit your cards to me, check out the Twitter. All that stuff's in the description below. And thank you guys for continuously supporting the channel with these. It's just a great, fun exercise to take a look at these cards and review them to the best of my abilities. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day. And stay salty, my friends.